Hi viewers, welcome back to Sahara TV. Once again, my name is Adeola Fayehun. So this week, the President, Goodluck Jonathan, fired the Aviation Minister, that's Ms. Stella Oduah, who has been embroiled in a series of corruption allegations. Now to discuss this latest development with me on the show today is Barrister Monday Ubani. He's the chairman of the Ikeja branch of the Nigerian Bar Association. Barrister Ubani, welcome to Sahara TV.
Thank you, Adeola. How are you?
I'm fine. So, as you're aware, the aviation minister was recently fired, and you actually made a statement that the president should not just fire her, but that she should be handed over to the EFCC for investigations and for prosecution. So my question is, though, how do we avoid Oduah walking away the same way others have walked away with corruption allegations?
Well, the president has said it several times that he is averse to corruption. I think this is the right time for him to prove that particular point by ensuring that after having fired Mrs. Stella Oduah, Stella Oduah must be handed over to EFCC for proper investigation. And that has been our minimum demand. Now, if the investigation is carried out by EFCC and she's found to be culpable, we also demand that EFCC should prosecute her. That is the only way for Nigerians to actually believe President Jonathan that he is averse to corruption, that he does not in any way tolerate corruption in his government. People have been asked to resign and then walk away with their loot and with their impropriety in governance. And that is not the way to set a moral tone for good governance. If we want to set our country right and make sure that a country that is governed by rules and regulation, by laws, we must begin to ensure that people who offend the law must be made to face the law. So if Stella Oduah is asked to resign or has been served and asked to walk away just that way, we are not setting a good precedent. So the best way to handle this matter is to allow the security agencies to come in and do a proper investigation, carry out a proper investigation, because there is an allegation of crime that have been committed here. So that investigation must be carried out in such a manner that if there is any impropriety that requires prosecution, then she should face the law. That is the only way to go.
But there has been several officials that were alleged to have corruption cases, and they've been prosecuted by the EFCC and eventually walked away free. How do we avoid something like this from happening with the case of Ms. Stella Oduah?
It's important that the security agencies do carry out what we call a thorough investigation. Most of our method of investigation is still very crude, very primitive, and not conforming to the scientific method of investigating crime. Now, you must succeed in proving your case beyond reasonable doubt in criminal prosecution. Now, the onus lies on the prosecution to do that, and he can only do that with evidence that has been gathered in the course of investigation. Now, if the investigation is carried out in such a manner as to leave several loopholes intentionally or create an avenue for the criminal to walk away, then there is nothing the judiciary can do. So it is important that the prosecution does the proving, but in proving crime, you must also substantiate your evidence. I mean, you must look at evidence. It must be very substantive enough in order to convince the judge beyond reasonable doubt that this man has committed or this woman has committed a crime. A lot of high-profile cases are being dismissed for want of evidence, and I think most of these things are planned. They are not. Most of the security agencies are not thorough in their investigation, and we are hearing of many of them being dismissed for want of sufficient evidence to nail them. And this is not setting a good precedent for us as a nation. Nigeria is retarded today as a result of corruption. We are not making any progress as a nation as a result of corruption. And a country in such a situation, we take issue of corruption seriously, especially at the prosecution stage. But that can only be done when the security agencies have done their job thoroughly. And of course, the judiciary also must be alive to its responsibility in ensuring that if the evidences are so substantive enough that no criminal will walk away from the judiciary.
And speaking of officials walking away freely, former Speaker Dimeji Bankole this week was just pronounced innocent despite allegations of him stealing billions of Naira. First of all, I'm wondering your thought about this verdict.
Yeah, I have not read the sufficient material probably given by the court. why the Dimeji was exculpated at the end of the trial. I don't even understand that Dimeji himself was bemused. He was totally shocked even when the pronouncement of innocence was made on him. He couldn't even get up for some minutes because he couldn't believe his ears that he was pronounced innocent. He was totally shocked, beyond reasonable doubt, so to speak. So I have not read the material, but the point is this. If there are intentions on the part of both security agencies or whoever investigated the case to create loopholes, they do it. I have handled several cases. I've been involved in criminal prosecutions, and I've seen some cases that, if you look at it, there is no way you can convict any accused person with evidence that either the security, either the police or EFCC has gathered together in order to nail the accused. So issue of sufficiency of evidence is critical. If you allege that somebody has committed a crime and the ingredients of the offense is missing, in your investigation, then there is nothing the prosecution can do in the circumstance. So the issue of sufficiency of evidence is very key. But I tell you that most of these cases are lost and won at the investigation level, and sometimes they are all outplanned in order to give the accused person an escape route.
And speaking of evidence, the judge actually said that the EFCC didn't have enough evidence to prove that the Meji Bankole actually benefited from the billions of Naira that was embezzled. Now, if the judge is true about the EFCC, I'm just wondering your views about how the EFCC is conducting its business in recent times.
Yeah, of course, you are aware that EFCC recently wrote out names of people that he has convicted for the past 1 year, 2013. And if you look at those lists, there are a list of poor men, and I'm saying poor women, who are alleged to have committed cases of 419, money laundering. I didn't see all the high-profile, big politicians, that EFCC has been prosecuting over the years. And so EFCC was, brandishing those names, and of course, even the president himself was saying EFCC should go ahead and publish all the names of those it has convicted. And I look at those names; there are no notable names there. Now, why is it that all these security agencies, why is it that our judicial system works when it involves a poor man? The evidences are there, they don't in any way hide them, and they are sufficient enough to convict an accused person. But when it concerns, big men in Nigeria, these things are planned. And most times the evidence, are said not to be sufficient. Remember how Ubani also was alleged to have not committed any crime here in Nigeria, over 170 count charge, and the man was acquitted until he ran into a foreign land, and then there was sufficient evidence in those in that country for him to be convicted. Suddenly, So what we're saying is that these things are planned here, and it's not healthy for us as a nation. I'm saying it here as a citizen who is also a stakeholder in this country. I'm a lawyer by training, and I'm over 20-something years at the bar. And I know how these things are being planned in this country to exculpate the big men here. It's only when it involves a poor man that the system is activated and the system becomes very efficient suddenly. But when it involves a rich person, of course, you see how our political cases are dragging over years, almost 8 years, 9 years, on issue of primary matters, and they have been allowed to even appeal to Supreme Court on issue of jurisdiction, which has always been settled. The issue of where the court should, come in has always been settled, but people will always make a mountain out of it. And before you know it, they go to Court of Appeal, from Court of Appeal to Supreme Court, and sometimes 8 years, 9 years, the witnesses would have died, or they would have been intimidated, or they would have been subdued. Of course, this is a country where there is no special arrangement being made for the witnesses. There is no protection scheme for witnesses. And so, of course, you see what goes on in where you are. When a witness is very key in order to nail an accused person, the system makes provision for him, makes sure that he's protected, sometimes even changes his identity in order to secure a conviction of a big criminal. But here, the system leaves the witness to his own fate. And so he may likely be intimidated or subdued or even threatened. And most times the issue of coming forward with boldness to give evidence becomes very scanty. So it is important that we put our system in place if we really want to run a country that is very efficient. So I see the judicial system, the prosecution system, especially for high-profile cases, being planned, for escape route for most of them. And that is why 8 years, 10 years, those cases still linger on. Or if eventually the court makes a pronouncement, it's usually there is no sufficient evidence to nail them.
Thank you. Also, another case that is very popular right now is the issue of the missing $20 billion, the NNPC, according to CBN. And the finance minister, Dr. Okonjo, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala recently said that we now need external auditors to come and look into the accounts of the NNPC. So I'm just wondering what you think about that.
Now, when I hear the issue of external auditor coming in, I know that that is another way for this matter to be buried. And of course, we will not get to hear the truth of this matter. I believe Sanusi in this matter. Sanusi happens to be the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria, and I will let us know what is the role of the Central Bank. This is a banker's bank. This is a bank of the government. Sanusi is supposed to be the keeper of the funds of the federal government. He's supposed to be aware of income and all expenses of government. Now, if Sanusi tells you that there is an expectation of a certain amount of money that's supposed to be in Federation account, and that money is not there, and he's crying, he has written a memo secretly to the president, and nothing was done. Now, we are now investigating the missing money because there was a leakage of that letter. If you and I were not aware of the leakage of the letter, of that content of the letter, nobody would have heard about the missing amount. But somebody intentionally leaked this letter so that Nigerians can know what is going on. So the point is, I believe Sanusi over this because Sanusi himself has always been, on the side of the government. But now that he had decided to tell the truth because soon he's going to leave government. So I always believe those who are outside government, when they're outside government, they decide to tell the truth. And so I believe what he's saying, that there is a missing amount of money, and that missing amount of money must be investigated thoroughly by impartial people. These external auditors they are talking about, who are they? Can they not be compromised? Are we not aware of what goes on in this country when government says we want to do this, at the end of the day, nobody hears anything about it? At the end of the day, the matter will be swept under the carpet. So when I hear about independent auditors, I started to wonder, who are those independent auditors that will now tell us what is happening to our amount? I believe the central bank governor who is telling us that there is a missing amount of money. And of course, NNPC has come up with an explanation that is not convincing enough. The explanation is that they spent some of the money in oil pipeline vandalization. They spent some of the money on issue of petroleum subsidy. Now, the next question that the Senate committee chairman posed to the officials of NNPC and the ministers, can you spend any money as a government agency without appropriation? And of course, the answer was, you cannot. But they said they did. And he made it very clear, and I heard him very clearly, the chairman of the Senate committee that was investigating this, that the import of that admission should not be lost on Nigerians. That if a government agency can come boldly on air, to the hearing of every Nigerian, that they have spent money without appropriate appropriation, without the National Assembly appropriating such an amount of money for the government agency. What are the likely consequences for such infraction? That is what the man was trying to say, that the import should not be lost on Nigeria. Somebody has committed an infraction. You are not supposed to spend any money as a government agency without appropriation. And if you have done that, it is a criminal liability for which somebody said she wrote. That is important. And I got him very clearly. And I think the president of the country also probably heard him very clearly. And I think Nigerians also heard him clearly. The National Assembly also must have heard what the Senate committee chairman said on air about the import of that admission.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Ubani, for joining us today and for sharing your thoughts about these issues. Really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you, my sister. Thank you very much, Adeola.
All right. All right, viewers, that has been Barrister Monday Ubani sharing his opinion about the recent developments in Nigeria from the resignation or the firing of Ms. Stella Oduah, the aviation minister, to what's going on at the NNPC. We have much more to come. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.